When you download the iHeartRadio app and put the WD and Shook Show on your list of stations, you will prove to the world that you're a little bit smarter than everyone else. The WD and Shook Show, your connection to the signs of the times.
Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
And welcome to this edition of End Time News. Once again, I am your very humbled host, W. Dean Shook. Thank you for being here. I appreciate every one of you, as usual. And we're going to cover on this update the illegal invasion of underage kids on our southern border, because there seems to be something behind this. That's the Cloward-Piven maneuver. Now, for those of you who have listened to me for a long time, you've heard me talk about this before. This is an Obama favorite. He has studied this along with the rules of Saul Alinsky and rules for radicals. This is one that he's got one of two purposes for. Let's cover this according to the New York Times. 2 U.S. congressmen tell WND that they believe the flooding of America's southwest border with thousands of illegal alien children seeking government handouts and citizenship is the intended outcome of policies by the Obama administrations derived from a strategy by radical sociologists to transform America into a socialist state. Now, some of you may say, well, that's just a mouthful of conspiracy theory. Well, how many times have we reported things that have sounded like a conspiracy theory that turned out to be true? Let's go over this. In the 1960s, Professor Andrew Cloward and Francis Fox Piven of Columbia University, Obama's alma mater, devised a plan to provoke chaos by deliberately overwhelming governmental systems and the U.S. economy to the point of collapse, paving the way for state intervention that would ultimately replace America's free enterprise republic with a collectivist system. According to Representative Steve King from Iowa, he said, "I do feel this attempt to flood the border with illegals is playing out to be the Cloward-Piven theory. If you don't see them bring reinforcements down there to seal the border, that means, yes, it's a Cloward-Piven maneuver to flood the country until we get to the point where we're an open border country that welcomes everybody, legal and illegal." Representative Steve Stockman agreed that Obama, who studied the chaos strategy in Colombia, according to a classmate, is trying to do a Cloward-Piven thing on the border. Well, this turns out to be just a hurricane-force flood. It's a flood of illegal alien children enticed by the Obama policy favorable to minors, which has escalated to a crisis of the federal government's creation, according to Governor Jan Brewer. The nearly 1,000 illegal aliens from Mexico and Central America crossing into Texas each day is being compared to Hurricane Katrina by overwhelmed officials. "How do you prepare for that?" said Don Ray, the executive director of Texas Border Sheriff Coalition. "You don't have an influx of people like that without having an impact." Ray told KRLD-TV in Dallas-Fort Worth that similar to the aftermath of Katrina, relocation services are in operation. In the case of Katrina, most of them were United States citizens and people that were here lawfully, but now you have people that aren't here lawfully. Among the policies allegedly attracting illegal aliens is deferred action for childhood arrivals, which allows some illegals who came to the U.S. as children to defer deportation. Well, according to ex-border agents, immigration flood is orchestrated. They're reporting an organization of former Border Patrol agents Wednesday charged the federal government under the administration of President Obama is deliberately arranging for a flood of immigrant children to arrive in America for political purposes. He went on to say this is not a humanitarian crisis, it's predictable, orchestrated, and contrived assault on the compassionate side of Americans by their political leaders that knowingly put minor illegal children at risk for purely political purposes. This according to a statement released by the National Association of Former Border Patrol Officers. Certainly, we're not gullible enough to believe that thousands of unaccompanied minor Central American children come to America without encouragement, aid, and assistance of the United States government, the official said. FoxNews.com reported this week that Arizona Governor Jan Brewer calls the situation a creation of the federal government, and Senator Jeff Sessions has assigned blame for the calamity to President Obama. Fox News reported it had obtained a memo from an official with Customs and Borders who said the current policies are serving as an incentive for illegal aliens to sneak into the U.S. He went on to say the blame goes to the Obama administration policy for enticing the illegals, particularly the Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals launched in 2012, which recently was renewed. More than 33,000 have been caught at the Texas border alone in the last 8 months, overwhelming Border Patrol capabilities. A federal judge even concluded the White House has chosen not to enforce border security laws. Well, there's much larger consequences to this. According to an exclusive from WND, a Mexican soldier draws guns on U.S. agents. Yes, I said Mexican soldiers. The U.S. government is taking no action on an unbelievable foray in which 2 Mexican soldiers came across the border in Arizona and held U.S. border agents at gunpoint for half an hour, according to government watchdog organization Judicial Watch. In its Corruption Chronicles files, said after the 35-minute tense confrontation January 26, the Mexican soldiers retreated south across the border and nothing ever happened, and the Obama administration just let it slide. Judicial Watch keeps an eye on government behavior, such as the mega-million-dollar vacations for the Obamas, and they said that the Mexican soldiers retreated when the U.S. agents drew their weapons and summoned assistance. The report said the Mexicans misidentified themselves to border agents, claiming to be pursuing drug smugglers. Judicial Watch said, however, the Mexican soldiers aren't chasing drug smugglers, but instead are protecting cartels as they transport their cargo into the U.S. through the desert. The incident, said Judicial Watch, is just the latest in a long string of incursions by the Mexican military into the U.S. Records from the Department of Homeland Security show Mexican military incursions occur often and go unpunished by the U.S. The problem has only gotten worse over the year. DHS documents reveal 226 incursions by Mexican government personnel into the U.S., which occurred between 1996 and 2005. In 2007 alone, there were 25 incursions. So as a result of these things, according to Congressman, impeach Holder for human smuggling. A humanitarian crisis is growing quickly in parts of Texas and Arizona as thousands upon thousands of unaccompanied illegal teenagers flood across the border and the federal government moves them to various locations for shelter. Paul Gosser from Arizona says the mess is entirely the work of the Obama administration and that Attorney General Eric Holder needs to be impeached for flouting federal law and effectively engaging in human smuggling. Gosar has called for Holder's resignation several times in the past over issues such as the faulty botched gun-running operation known as Fast and Furious and the Justice Department harassment of Fox News Channel reporter James Rosen. He said the Attorney General's latest actions make it imperative that he be removed. This is the continuing destruction of the rule of law and the constitutional framework which we operate under, said Gosar, who cited it as evidence that Holder needs to be removed from office. He said, I'm convinced now that it's been reported by a U.S. federal judge that the Attorney General is in fact violating criminal smuggling laws. Congress has the ability to impugn these people that actually disregard the rule of law. It's time to call him into question, to stop the interference and the destruction of the rule of law. And let me tell you, there's been some hearings about the Bergdahl exchange, and I want to share this story with you. This is also an exclusive from WND. Washington Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel apparently isn't going to let the Obama administration throw him under the bus in the Bergdahl scandal. In fact, you could say it's just the opposite. In his opening statement Wednesday at a hearing of the House Armed Services Committee, Hagel made a point of saying it was President Obama who made the final decision to swap Bergdahl for 5 top Taliban leaders. He said, "Mr. Chairman, I want to be clear on one fundamental point. I would never sign off on any decision I did not feel was in the best interest of this country, nor would the President of the United States, who made the final decision with the full support of his national security team." The administration recently implied the final decision was made by Hagel. After administration officials gave members of Congress a closed-door briefing Monday on the swap, Committee Chairman Buck McKeon said they indicated it was Secretary Hagel who made the final call. Other members of Congress also left the briefing with the impression final approval for the trade was given by Hagel. An incredulous McKeon wondered, it was the President of the United States that came out in the Rose Garden with the Bergdahls and took all the credit. And now that there's been a little pushback, he's moving away from it and says it was Secretary Hagel. Well, on Wednesday, in testimony, Hagel emphasized more than once it was President Obama who made the call to make the swap, saying the president's decision to move forward with this transfer of these detainees was a tough call, but I support it and stand by it. Boy, the news on these things are breaking fast. We're out of time for this update, but on our next update, you'll get more news the mainstream media will not tell you. You can email me at contact@wdeanshook.com, and you can get these full stories at the website. That's wdeanshook.com. You can follow me on Twitter. That's /WDeanShook, and Facebook /WDeanShook. I'll look for you there and see you on our next program. Thank you.
Do you think the media is biased? Maybe they're leaving something out, or there's something they're not telling you. Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
You can get these full stories and more at WDeanShook.com. That's WDeanShook.com.